Hey, what's up everybody, Crazy here, and today we'll be talking about the possibility of The Shining and it being added to Dead by Daylight. So yeah, recently there was another player satisfaction survey that Dead by Daylight posted, and in this survey, they asked about different licenses, and The Shining and it were in fact featured on this survey. We also know that the August and November chapters are both going to be licensed. The August chapter will feature a killer and a survivor, and the November chapter will be only a killer. I personally believe that The Shining could work for the August chapter, having Jack Torrance as a killer and Wendy Torrance as a survivor, and then in November we could possibly have Pennywise as the single killer licensed chapter. And if you're wondering why I decided to group both of these together in this speculation video, it's because they are both Stephen King properties, and also are both owned by Warner Brothers. You see here that The Shining, while it was created by Stephen King, the movie rights are owned by Warner Brothers. Also the same case for Pennywise. So it's worth mentioning that Dead by Daylight technically has worked with Warner Brothers in the past. This is because they worked with New Line Cinema, who is a Warner Brothers company. They worked with New Line Cinema with the Nightmare on Elm Street chapter, and this could potentially be a good way for them to communicate with the license holders and get it in the game. For The Shining, I would want it to be based on the 1980 Stanley Kubrick film. I think this is the most iconic iteration of The Shining, and therefore I think it would work perfectly. Some might be worried though, because Stephen King has actually gone on record to say that he wasn't the biggest fan of this movie.
Did you like Kubrick's film of The Shining?
No. Cold. I'm not a cold guy. I think one of the things that people relate to in my books is there's a warmth, there's a reaching out and saying to the reader, I want you to be a part of this. And with Kubrick's The Shining, I felt that it was very cold.
Even though Stephen King did still say this, he was still willing to allow Jack Torrance from the original 1980 film in Dr. Sleep. We even see also the iconic design on the floors, so there very much is definitely inspiration from the 1980 film. We even see in an interview with Mike Flanagan, the director for Dr. Sleep, he talks about how he needed to get permission from Stephen King to add those aspects of the original film into Dr. Sleep.
Well, he pretty infamously dunked on the Shining movie.
Yes.
So what kind of conversations did you two have? Because you're kind of combining both of those elements of his work and the Kubrick film.
Which I knew would be a really tough sell for him.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when we were developing the script, I said, well, this is what I think I should do. I think there's only one way to make this movie, and that's to acknowledge kind of the cinematic impact of Kubrick's film. That's the language that everybody knows when they think of the Overlook and the Torrances. This could be a real chance to celebrate that. But it also could be a really wonderful opportunity to take those two visions, which still to this day is something that he has very strong feelings about, and try to bring them back together a little bit. Try to reconcile them, even if only a little. And that, as a fan, was an irresistible opportunity. After he kind of heard me out and heard how I would approach it and why I wanted to do it that way, he gave his blessing to do that before I went to write the script. And if he hadn't given me his blessing, I wouldn't have made the film.
So it is totally possible that we could see this still happen, even though he wasn't the biggest fan of this movie. And now that we have it out of the way that there could be a possibility of The Shining and it being the next chapters, I want to dive deeper into how I think these could actually work in the game. So for The Shining, the killer would of course be Jack Torrance. This would be his base skin. It would also be great if we can actually get the likeness and voice from Jack Nicholson. It would be amazing to be chased down by him and actually hear him kind of egging you on and stuff. For his ability, I'd imagine it could be some kind of rage ability that only lasts for a certain amount of time and has a cooldown, and the ability itself could maybe feature a built-in brutal strength in which you can maybe break pallets and doors and stuff with just your base attack, and not have to go through the whole animation of actually breaking the pallet or doors. I think this would be very interesting to see and it would even allow us to have the iconic "Here's Johnny" line.
Here's Johnny!
I definitely think if we get him in the game, we need to have that line. Even if it isn't necessarily voiced by Jack Nicholson, we still need that in some way, I think. It's too iconic not to. I think it would be very terrifying to see Jack Torrance running around the map in a very angry manner. We see in the movie he has that kind of limp going on whenever he walks, and it would definitely be creepy to be chased down by him.
Danny! Danny boy? Danny?
Now for the possible skins, there's not a lot, but I did have a couple ideas. So we do see this look here in the movie, and I think this could potentially be a good shirt as the DLC exclusive. This is for if you buy the full DLC through the store rather than buying the character separately. We see this happen with a lot of other chapters where you'll get like a bonus weapon skin or a bonus shirt for the survivor or something like that. So this would be a cool way to implement that. And for the last skin, we could have a frozen Jack Torrance. And while yes, he is frozen so it doesn't make too much sense, it could be explained through the entity. We know the entity is able to make things come true that otherwise would not. And this would be a better example of what it could possibly look like. You can even have like a frost effect around the skin. It'd make it very interesting and different. And yeah, I definitely think this one would be hard to get right, but if they could, I think it'd be very cool to see. And now for the survivor, I would like to see Wendy Torrance in the game. This would be her base look. And for one of her other skins, she could have this as the DLC exclusive shirt. It's basically just the last look but without the cardigan. We can also see this look here when she is in, I believe it was the therapy class. Also this look while she is going on the walk around the maze would be pretty cool. And now for the perks for her, I don't have an idea for every single perk because I don't think I'm very great at coming up with perk ideas, to be honest. But I did think that in the movie, she has a lot of scenes where she's fighting back, especially in that iconic "Here's Johnny" scene. You see her slash at his hand when he goes to try to unlock the door. And it makes me wonder, maybe it could be a perk that has some kind of stun ability whenever you're nearby and the killer tries to break a pallet or break a door. I'm not sure exactly how that would work thematically, but I think something similar to that would be very cool to see. And before we move on, I do want to say that I think it would be great to also get the go-ahead from Shelley Duvall, the actress for Wendy Torrance, and it would also be great to maybe have her likeness in the game. I think it's very important that they get the blessing from Shelley Duvall, because we do know that in the original film, she did have a lot of troubles during filming, and it was a very tough experience for her.
From May until October, I was really in and out of ill health because the stress of the role was so great, and the stress of being away from home, just uprooted and moved somewhere else, and I had just gotten out of a relationship, and so for me it was just tumultuous.
As you just heard, it's very clear that there was a lot of problems with filming and it seemed to be a very stressful situation. We do also see, though, in other interviews, she does seem to be more accepting of the original film, and has even gone on record to say that she understands why it had to be such a hard process.
I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. Why? Because of Stanley. And it was a fascinating learning experience. It was such intense work that I think it makes you smarter, but I wouldn't want to go through it again.
So yeah, as you just heard, it does seem that later on in her life she did seem to be more accepting of the film, so it's unclear if she would have a problem with something like this happening or not. We do see that Dr. Sleep did include Wendy Torrance, so maybe that could have been cleared up. I think the only way to really know for sure is, like I said, to get her blessings and get the actual likeness rights from the actress herself. That way there isn't any issues with that. Also, if for whatever reason that doesn't work out, because of the reasons listed, we could maybe see Danny Torrance from Dr. Sleep. He can even have a perk centered around the shine ability that can maybe be some sort of aura reading perk. Also, if we still do Wendy, he can also maybe be a legendary skin for her. That'd be cool to see as well. So with the killer and the survivor out of the way, it could be done here, but I think we need to see a map. This would of course be the Overlook Hotel. They can either have it at daytime, or when the snow blizzard is going on. I would like to see it with all the snow around the map because I think it'd be a very interesting look, especially with us being able to go outside and inside. It'd be cool to see the change of atmosphere in the map. The inside would of course feature the iconic carpet in the original film and some tight corridors, but not too many of them, as to make the map balanced. The outside could feature the maze. I do admit though, this should be a very small maze as to not get people stuck in it, because that could be a potential issue. There can also be outside areas with park benches and stuff like that. And if any of you are worried that this could be too big of a map because of the outside and inside being featured, we could maybe see something happen like the RPD map did, where we have it split off into two parts. Maybe there could be one just being the outside area and one just being the inside of the actual Overlook Hotel itself. Or it could be kind of sectioned off into west and east like Resident Evil. I'm not sure exactly how they would want to do that, and it's very hard to tell how this actually would feel in game. Whichever way they do this, I think it's very important that we do have the Overlook Hotel featured with this chapter, because there's so many iconic areas that are featured in the film. For example, the writing room would be an essential thing to have featured on this map. We can have the typewriter featured on the table, and it can have the script that says Jack is a dull boy. We can also have the iconic staircase, where the scene where he's pushing Wendy up the stairs is. This is also a pretty big and open area, so it could be a good whooping area as well. We also see the ballroom is a very iconic part of the movie as well. It can also feature the bathrooms. This also would be a very big open area that could have very good loops. The kitchen I think should also be featured. It'd be cool to have a frost effect whenever you're in the freezer rooms. And this would be more tight spaces, but I think it would be a good mix-up because of the other areas I mentioned that would be more big and open. We can also have the iconic room 237 featured as well. It would be very interesting to maybe see like hallucinations or different scary sounds going on when you're in this room, just to give off an unsettling vibe. Or maybe it could even be the basement on this map. I know that's a bit of a crazy idea because usually the basement is the same on every single map, but maybe now's the time to mix things up. It would be pretty interesting to see that for a map to actually have a different basement for once. However they implement this, I do think it's important to include this room because it's so iconic. Also, another interesting idea I had would be a unique endgame collapse as well. We can have the elevators opening up with the iconic scene of the blood rushing in. We can also have the characters start to experience hallucinations and stuff like that, with the twins showing up. These would disappear when you get close to them, so it wouldn't create any obstacles in the way or anything like that. And if they don't want to do this during the endgame collapse, I do think it would be important to feature these in some way. But yeah, however they do this chapter, I think it is important to feature all of the things I just mentioned, and it would be very amazing to see that in the game, as The Shining is one of my favorite movies. So now that we got The Shining out of the way, now we can move on to It. This one's a little smaller because the idea for it is only the single killer, but I do think it is important to go over it still. I personally would prefer this to be based on the 2017 remake, but don't worry, I do have an idea for the original Tim Curry series. So yeah, this of course would be the iconic Pennywise look. This would be his normal base skin. And for his abilities, there's honestly a lot of things they can do, but I'll tell you the one that I went with personally. And the one I'm going to go with is the idea of a shape-shifting ability. If you may not know, the Pennywise himself is actually more so a shapeshifter than anything. The Pennywise clown is actually just a form that he chooses to show himself as. We see in the movie there's tons of different looks that he has, and one of them even being this creepy spider form here. These different shapeshift forms I think should feature different abilities, especially with the spider one. And because these abilities could be weaker than others and stronger than others, for example, the spider one I'd imagine would be pretty powerful, I do think it's important that he cycles through these randomly when he activates the ability. This would work kind of similar to how the Knight's Guards switch out, so something kind of like that. And for different skins, there's not a lot to go off of, but we could, for example, see this look here where he has the teeth kind of protruding out, and then the squished face with the glowing eyes. And for my last skin idea, I think it'd be very cool to see a legendary skin of the original Pennywise played by Tim Curry. I know the original series is very important to some people because they grew up with it, so I think it'd be very cool to see this featured as well. And what's cool about this idea is the shapeshift ability could still work, because in the original series, we see him take on different shapeshifting forms, such as the spider form, and this is actually how it looks like in the original series. So yeah, it could totally work out just fine, and I think it'd be very cool to see all this stuff featured in the game. And yeah, that's basically it. I hope you all enjoyed my idea for how The Shining and It could be added into the game. I really do hope these come into the game one day, one way or another. Doesn't necessarily have to be these next chapters coming up. But yeah, whatever they end up doing, I'm excited for these next licensed chapters, and I hope you all are too. Also, I hope you all are enjoying the anniversary event. If you like this video, a like would be much appreciated. A subscribe would be very helpful. And as always, stay safe in the fog, everybody.